I like autumn, not my favorite. Brandy loves autumn. I know that. Brandy's an autumn girl. Jenny loves autumn. She loves cozy sweaters, and she loves like all the colors and whatnot. I'm a summer guy, but you know, everybody has their own seasons, and that's okay. So we're going to kick off, and it's the same format as all of our other seminars. We've got a PowerPoint. Brandy will be dropping slides in. Don't feel the need to take furious notes. This will go up as a video and a blog post pretty soon on our website. If you have any questions regarding comprehension, I don't explain something well, I get sidetracked, I digress. I mean, that's never going to happen when it's Brandy and I, but if it does, feel free to ask a question. Brandy's got the chat going, so she's good with that. If it's a general question about something in the autumn or something specific for your garden, try and save them for the end. There will always be a Q&A section, and we'll try and fit everybody in. We have a lot to cover as always, so we want to keep it going along. But if you find yourself getting lost, you need me to clarify something, please jump in. We don't want to leave anybody behind. So again, I hope everybody's having a great morning. The weather is definitely changing. Yeah, it's beautiful outside. The almanac, excuse me, the almanac are calling for a long, dry autumn. Sorry, I'm English. I always say autumn, not fall.
I love it.
They're totally interchangeable, but autumn is the word that always comes to mind for me. But if you guys remember last year, how incredible that fall was. Since I've been in Alberta, that has to rank up there as one of the most beautiful autumns I've ever seen. And everybody, yeah, across the board said the same thing. And the same, we're going to get the same this year. Here's hoping, fingers crossed. Now, with that being said, a lot of people tend to rush through the fall period. I don't know whether it's because the weather might change, and unlike the spring, where the weather tends to change for the better, this time of year it tends to change for the worse. And I don't know whether or not it's because, you know, September and it's like back to school, and then the moment the kids go back to school, it's Halloween and Christmas at the same time, and kind of the commercials and the big box stores kind of rush us through, and it's all about that. Let's take our time and slow down and enjoy the season. It's its own season. And there's still stuff to be done in the garden. So, you know, it's not like spring. Like I said, it's not that manic energy of the spring where you're like, oh, I've got to get it raked and seeded and watered and fertilized. I got planting to do. I got to get my seedlings outside. I got to harden up my plants. I need to start pruning, transplanting, dividing, all of those jobs, bam, 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 all hitting you one after another. Plus, in the spring, you want to enjoy it. You want to get outside. You want to, you know, go to the parks and see the ducklings. And there's so many things happening. The autumn is a lot quieter in the garden and in life in general. So let's try and, you know, slow it down and see what we can do in the garden. So the three main categories that you can break it down to for your garden is your maintenance, which is ongoing from the time you open the garden till the time the garden goes to sleep. Cleaning and planting. And you may notice when we do this, I'm going to touch on some subjects. Like I have bulbs, okay? But we're not going to jump the gun. These guys are going to get an honorable mention. But next week, we're doing a whole webinar, just on bulbs. We're going to talk about what they are, why they need to be cold, what you can expect, how to ensure that success, how to keep the squirrels from digging them up. We're going to talk all about that next week, but they're going to get an honorable mention. We're going to talk about raking and cleaning, but then when we talk about putting your garden to bed fully for the winter, we're going to touch on that again. So you'll see a few repeating things, but when we talk about the maintenance, there's four main categories we're talking about, and that's weeding, watering, fertilizer, and pest disease pathogens, the not so fun stuff. So we'll start with weeding. And I know a lot of people, they see their perennials dying back. We see our annuals, they're getting less light, or there's a frost and they're not producing the flowers. Or in the case of a frost, they're done. And we see the same thing happening with the weeds. So we go, oh, well, I guess I don't have to worry about weeding. They're dying. But they're not. There are perennial weeds, the dandelion, the thistle, and they're dying back like all of the others. Now is a great, great time to get it removed. As it's dying back, get it out by the root. There isn't much else going on in the garden. Get those weeds out. A lot of times too, the reason why we see a lot of harvest at this time of year, apples and tomatoes and things like that, is as the tree is dying back, it's pushing everything out. It's like, I don't need this, getting energy to my roots, so things are happening faster. It is the same with the seeds on our weeds, be it an annual or a perennial weed. It's trying to rush out its production to get its seeds out before the winter hits. So it's always a good idea, basically, to take care of them. And another good idea is, you know, if you've been a little delinquent and you haven't been out there eating ruthlessly and you've kind of, you know, taken a few weeks off, go out, and when you're doing your cleanup, have a look. And maybe you go, well, I have barely any weeds in this section, but this section is full of weeds. It might be in your lawn, it might be in your veggie garden, it might be in your perennial beds. Then look as to why. Maybe your lawn's a bit sparser there. Maybe the grass didn't come in. Maybe it's in a shadier location and you put down a sun seed. Now you need to put down a shade seed. Maybe in your perennial beds, you had a ton of perennials over here and you had creeping thyme and a juga and some echinacea. Everything was nice and dense and thick and the weeds couldn't really get in. But then over in this section, you only had a couple of smaller perennials, you didn't get a chance to prevent it. Well, maybe you want to divide some and put them over. Maybe next year you're like, oh, I want to put some new perennials in that area. I want to thicken it up with plants to choke my weeds out. So it's a good time to kind of take stock and be like, I have a bed, and I know exactly why. I didn't plant it this year. Jimmy likes to dig in it. Jimmy's my next door neighbor. No, I'm kidding. Jimmy's our dog. And he's a great dog. Doesn't trash the garden. There's one bed he likes to dig in it. He likes to drop his tennis ball in it, whatnot. Great. That's where he wants to dig. There's no point me planting there. Let him have that spot. However, that bed is full of weeds because there was nothing to choke them out. I look at where I did my tomatoes. A weed couldn't have grown because the tomatoes literally blocked everything of light. I put my strawberries at the base of my tomatoes, and my tomatoes wiped out my strawberries. They got so big. So I look at that and I go, tons of weed here because there's nothing, no weeds here because my tomatoes took care of it. So you want to kind of keep stock on that. And now is a good time of year. If you guys have followed along and you know me and you know everything, you know I'm not a huge fan of spray herbicides. However, in their place, they do work. And this time of year is actually a good time of year to use them. The plant is pulling everything it can out of the leaves, putting it into its roots to establish for the winter. You hit it with that while it's absorbing even more of that chemical to kill itself. But please, 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 as always, use it responsibly, read the label, check out what you should be doing. If you're going to spray your lawn, use Killex, not Roundup. Don't spray anything that might be in bloom because the pollinators are trying to get the last of their food. So just exercise caution when using sprays. I'm going to beat that point to death forever. I've been doing it forever and it's never going to stop. I'm not opposed to them. I just want people to use them responsibly. So that's it on weeding. And then if you're digging them out, if you're getting rid of them that way, just have at it. Weed as normal. And then the next thing is watering. And this is, you know, a lot of people go, oh, well, it's cooling down. It's not. It's going to be 24 degrees today. 24 degrees is a warm day. We had a few heat waves this summer where we were pushing high 20s, 30s, mid 30s for extended period of times. That is abnormally hot. This is actually above seasonal. But there's less light. The plants are kind of turning yellow. Things are dying back. It's like, it doesn't need as much water. That's not actually true. You do need to water. It gets so overlooked in the autumn about watering. And until that ground is frozen solid, you need to water. A frost isn't going to cut it. Yeah, you know what? A frost is probably going to wipe out. Well, not probably. A frost is going to wipe out your impatience and your New Guinea impatience. It's going to wipe out some of your vegetables. Your tomatoes are not going to be happy if it's a hard frost. A light frost, your tomatoes can normally bounce back and push through. A hard frost, tomatoes and cucumbers and whatnot are going to get hit back hard. But then the day might go up to 15 degrees. Those plants are still going to need water. And I'm not talking necessarily if your annual is dead, it's dead. I'm talking about your perennials, your trees, any fresh bulbs you've just planted are going to need to be watered. Now, they're not going to need the same amount of water that they needed in the summer when we're getting 16 hours of sunlight and it's 35 degrees. I was out there some days watering 3 times a day. Morning, middle of the day, because I had to cool them down. It was too hot. In the evening, because they were just dried up. They were just producing so much. They're not going to require that, but they are going to require water. A good rule of thumb, it's a tough one to say, but you want to look at giving them about 1 inch to 2 inches of water a week. That includes what we might get from rainfall, precipitation from Mother Nature. Normally what I do, I find at this time of year, a bit later in the morning, 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, one great watering every day keeps my plants healthy. But work to your plants. Don't take any advice. You follow that, it might be too much water, it might not be enough. It might be full sun and windy, and it's fully dry by noon. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, your plants are wilting. So always keep an eye on it. You know, rules of thumb are just that. They're very broad guidelines. Keep an eye on your garden. And what watering does is it actually helps your plants to go into the winter. It helps those roots develop. So what's happening right now is a plant like this one, a bleeding heart. I grabbed this deliberately for this and to talk about planting. So all of this, as you can see, it's probably not a lot of photosynthesis going on right now. It's not green. All of that energy is now being forced into the roots. And these roots are like really bolstering themselves. They're getting deeper, they're holding on, they're advancing to get them through the winter to make sure that there's enough energy to push out new growth in the spring. So that is what the plant is doing. Without water, we know the roots aren't going to grow. We know that we've talked about it, we've touched on it. So you really want to water to give your plant the benefit to sprout up in the spring and establish and be firm to get through the winter. And then I even made a point that, as you can see, I love to beat a dead horse. Fall is a full season. Don't jump the gun. So, you know, I know people who are like, oh, I put my hose away and it's the middle of September. And I'm like, oh, no, that's not good. Water until the ground is frozen. Once that ground is frozen, then you can start putting away your hoses and whatnot. Now, the next one is fertilizing. Okay. And we talk a lot about fertilizer on TA Kids TV. We've done webinars on it. We've done seminars. We've done blog posts. Fertilizing, as we all know, is really, really important. Amend your soil. That, to me, as always, is the most essential. Fertilizer comes close second. Once your plants are big and they're established, you can't really amend that soil anymore without doing root damage, especially for your veggies and whatnot. So you're going to want to fertilize. But at this time of year, now you want to dial it back because we don't want to promote new growth going into a time when we could get a heavy frost out of nowhere. We are a hop, skip, and a jump away from those mountains. Our weather can change like that. Long range forecast, it's going to be beautiful. 2 weeks of full sun. You wake up tomorrow, frost warning. And we've all seen that happen in Calgary. And I've even seen that happen in Montreal. It's a lot rarer. It's a more stable temperature. But I've seen it happen where, you know, and then the day turns out gorgeous, but you get that frost. So you want to dial your fertilizer back, especially on your trees, shrubs, and perennials. Okay, no more fertilizer. You should have already stopped. If you haven't, you stop now. Now you go to your annuals. Keep it going. Keep fertilizing them. Doesn't matter if they're new growth. The frosts are going to kill them. Your tomatoes, now that they're like actively producing that fruit and it's reddening up and it's getting bigger, they're still going to need calcium. I know people who start dialing back calcium and their second flush of crops, starts getting covered in blossom end rot. You're gonna want to keep feeding them because they're still producing. You can't do them any more damage because either way they're dead. So I'm not telling you to over fertilize. I'm not saying if you're fertilizing every 2 weeks and the bee doing great, now you have to do it every week. Keep your program going, but don't stop. And do the same with your flowers. We've got a window box full of impatiens and begonias. Still going to fertilize it. I'm going to push that until I can't anymore, and then out they go, and we move on. So don't worry about your annuals and your veggies. You can't hurt them. It doesn't matter if they put out new growth. It doesn't matter what's going to happen. When that frost hits, old growth, new growth, fruits, everything is going to die. So you can keep going with that. And then lawns, you want to actually put down a proper fall fertilizer for your lawn. I grabbed the summer one by mistake. I wasn't paying any attention. I was in a mad rush. And I literally picked it up and I was like, fertilizer. I grabbed the summer one. So keep an eye out for that. You're going to want it to say autumn or fall down there. Fertilize your lawn. And what that's going to do, it's going to do the same thing. Is it's going to put.
It happened.
We literally said it wouldn't be one of our webinars and that stuff was falling down. Hey. You want to fertilize your lawn to keep it healthy, to stop the weeds getting in there. You know, we already touched on weeding. You've weeded it, you've cleaned it out, whether it's by hand or by spray. Now fertilize it, okay? Get that fertilizer on there. And you know, get it up there, because we're going to talk, excuse me, we're going to talk about cleaning. That's part of it. Get the weeds out, rake it, get the leaves off, and get that fertilizer down. Get that lawn healthy. Send the signal, hey lawn, it's time to start going to sleep. I don't want to see any new growth. I want your roots to develop. Your lawn will appreciate it. And then when you're doing your bulbs, again, we'll talk more on this. You want to use a bone meal, and bone meal has a few purposes at this time of year. It's extremely slow release. It's a 470. It's a low count, and you can use this if you divide some perennials. We're going to get to all of that. It's coming up. So, but that's fertilizer in a nutshell. Perennials, trees, shrubs, dial it back. Annuals, keep it going. Lawns, specifically fertilized. There is a specific fertilizer for your lawn. I recommend using that. So as opposed to the spring when we're like, fertilize everything. Now there's some rules accordingly to chop and change. So pests and disease. Hopefully you haven't been battling them. It was a dry year. That's always good to keep certain pathogens away. I really didn't see a lot of problems in my garden. I had a couple of slugs. I didn't even put down slug bait. They didn't do a ton of damage. Everything turned out just great. I honestly, I can tell you, I saw 2 aphids, not 2 clusters of aphids, 2 aphids. I didn't even squish them. I just left them alone. And I didn't see a lot of anything. I didn't see a lot of ladybirds. Saw a lot of dragonflies. I didn't see a lot of mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't affect the plants. That's
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, it makes me happy. It does affect the plants, because if I go outside and I'm covered in mosquitoes, I ain't working on the plants.
No, same.
Yeah, so the dragonflies make it better for me to go outside, which my plants appreciate because I'm out there taking care of them. But it was an outstanding summer. That being said, there were pathogens out there. So I just told you everything I didn't have. I had 2 areas in my garden that just got riddled with powdery mildew. It was bad. Like, I'm talking, the leaves look that green beginning and look that white at the end. So you want to keep going. And at this time of year, you may start seeing, especially if you've been looking after your garden, you may start seeing more of these pests. The rabbits, well, nobody's watering Nose Hill. There's no crops growing on Nose Hill. So that isn't that tasty. However, your lawn might still be nice and green. You may even still have lettuce and spinach growing. They're going to pop by and maybe see if they can have a nibble. So you might want to start looking at putting something down to keep them out. you may start having to use ones like this. Again, Confederate, and I'm picking parks around where I live, but Confederation Park, things are dying back as they do. It's somewhat of a wild area, but my garden is still being looked after. So the bugs are like, these plants don't have much nutrient. Hey, I know a place, and they come over to me. So I have to keep an eye out to see this right now. So I'm gonna be looking at my tomatoes. My tomatoes are still doing amazing. They're deep green, they're fruiting, the fruit's constantly turning. We're harvesting every day. So I'm gonna keep an eye out. And if I see them, I may need to use a trounce. I'm obviously gonna be looking for the ladybirds, for the dragonflies, for wasps, anything that might help me combat them. But I am going to also be looking at using this. And if you have a fungus, rust, black spot, powdery mildew, keep using this until all the leaves have fallen, and then we're going to touch on what to do with those leaves after. And for the bunny rabbits and the voles and stuff like that, you might want to put down some blood meal, some plant skid. You might want to take some chicken wire and put it around your garden. Lots of options. It may require a physical barrier for the big ones. You may want to spray this on the bugs, but it is an ongoing thing. You're going to want to keep an eye on it. Again, just because the plant is turning dormant and that leaf's turning yellow, okay, so the fungus is like, oh, well, I guess I'm going to fall off the leaf too. Now it's going to overwinter in the ground. You're going to want to keep taking care of it. You have any of this left over, put it under the kitchen sink. Cool, dry location. Next spring, give the bottle a shake. You can go. Take care of your garden. So it'll last. You're not wasting your money picking it up now. You're going to have that in the spring when, if you've had pathogens and bugs and everything else, you may need it again. Okay, so that was our maintenance. Now we're going to talk cleaning. When I'm talking cleaning, the four main things are raking, the thing that fell over, pruning, what to do, when to do it, how do we do it, removing the dead annuals, and cutting back the perennials. And again, it's not a one size fits all. Everything has its own little things. So let's start with raking and leaf blowing. And I don't think there is. You ask somebody what job do you do in the garden in the autumn? Raking. It's going to be, I'd say 90% of everybody's first answer. Leaves fall, everybody thinks of raking. Everybody's done it. So many kids are out with their little rakes, helping their dad, their mom. You see entire families out there. When Harry was very wee, I think I've got a picture of it somewhere. I raked every single leaf on the property, even from the back, and I pulled them all to the front. And we did a leaf pile about my height and probably around a 20-foot circumference, maybe bigger. And then for the rest of the afternoon, I let him run and dive into it and jump in it and bury himself and throw leaves out and rake it all up again. You know what? It was fun. And that's what it boils down to. So we made it fun. He helped me. He didn't help me the second time after he made the mess. But that's okay. And I like to remove the leaves from my lawn. I like to remove all of the leaves from my garden. But especially, you'll hear people say, oh, well, if you leave the leaves on the lawn or in your flower beds until the spring, it can act as a layer of insulation. Obviously, it can. You think about a forest, any wild area, that's what happens. However, especially here in Calgary, where we get massive temperature fluctuations. So we get snow, the leaves are down, they freeze, all the moisture is on them. Then it warms up, and all that ice and snow starts turning, and then it insulates. Well, now you've insulated moisture under decaying matter. That's not a good thing, especially if you're already fighting certain pathogens and funguses. Funguses.
Fungi.
What do you call a mushroom in the bar buying drinks for everybody? Fungi to be with. Anywho.
Not even talking about like mushrooms or anything.
Move right along. And another thing, if you want to put your fertilizer on your lawn, if you want to put your seed on your lawn, there's no point If your lawn's covered in leaves and you're walking around fertilizing, it's not getting to the lawn. You're wasting your time, your money. You may be doing more damage to your lawn. The wind comes, blows those leaves. Now it's not evenly fertilized. I personally get rid of my leaves. I don't leave them. I know some people do. The other thing is in my perennial beds, spring can happen quick. Like I said, we're all busy. I work in a garden center and I'm a gardener. I have very little time in the spring. My spring is go, go, go. I don't want to be in my perennial beds and my flower beds gently picking leaves out so I don't damage my perennials. I want to be able to throw my amendments in and get my garden going real quick. So that's another reason why I like to remove them. And when I remove them, I always pick an area of my garden. Doesn't matter where. The bugs will find it where I do an overwintering ground. Break all the leaves along your garage, along your fence, into a back corner. Wherever you feel you do. Sticks can go in there. It doesn't matter. And you're going to find when you open that up in the spring, you're going to find ladybirds and spiders and centipedes, all of the good bugs. So people go, oh, well, what about the bad bugs? Sure. You blow all the leaves and you've got aphids might go in there. How long do you think the aphids are going to last once the ladybirds and the spiders and the centipedes go in there to sleep as well? They're like a bed and breakfast. This place rocks. So it is way more beneficial for your good bugs. Leave that right through the spring. Then when you open it up, you take your rake and you just gently tickle it out. They start going out. They're hungry. They're thirsty. They'll leave that area. Then you can get rid of those leaves in the spring. But I pick an area I can do that in. And it's never going to be my lawn or my flower bed. It's always going to be down the side of my garage or something like that. And I understand if I do that and it is on a section of lawn, that section of lawn might need a bit more TLC in the spring, but the benefit of overwintering beneficial bugs cannot be overstated. Now, my caveat to that is if you have a tree that is covered in any one of those problems I just listed, covered in aphids, it was a terrible year for aphids, powdery mildew, whatever, you want to get rid of those leaves. Do not move those leaves to another section of your garden because all you're doing is transplanting the problem from here to here and you're spreading it around. You want to get those up and get them into your green bin as quickly as possible. The reason I say the green bin, the way the city composts, it's a hop composter. It is absolutely going to eradicate all of those. And the reason I brought up aphids, which sounds contradictory to what I just said, if you don't have many aphids, like I said, I saw 2. Probably tells me there's more in my garden, but not enough to be a problem. The beneficial bugs are going to chomp them. If I have an entire tree that's being absolutely covered in them, and I put that into the area, there's only so many bugs those beneficial bugs can eat. They're not going to be able to eat them all. And now I've just encouraged those aphids or spider mites to live in my garden year round. So if you have a problem area, get those gone, get them out of your yard as soon as possible. And that is going to help you combat the problem next year. So, oh, and another thing, really quick, I just want to touch on raking. The reason I grabbed this rake, it wasn't in my notes. I wanted to mention, I'm glad I remembered it. The reason I grabbed this rake is all you want to do at this time of year is get the debris off your lawn. Do not dethatch your lawn, okay? The fertilizer, the granules will break down. They will get through the thatch, okay? That thatch is forming a layer of insulation against the roots. So the thatch at this time of year is good. You get rid of it in the spring, so sunlight can hit the soil directly, more nutrients can get in, etc., etc. We talked about that when we did it in the spring. At this time of year, you just want to gently remove the debris. You're not looking to dethatch. The thatch is very beneficial going into the winter. That's why I didn't grab a hard metal rake. soft plastic one that I can just scoop and they're gone, and I'm not going to be ripping an area and getting all of that thatch out. So I did want to touch on that. Now, pruning. I see a lot of people go, oh, I'm going to cut back all my trees this time of year. Not great. Unless you're going to protect it, cover it, put something over it, it's not great. You're leaving a open wound to get hit by colder temperatures, frost, pathogens can still move, and we literally just talked about that. So pruning is best saved if you've waited all of this time. Pruning is best saved for full dormancy, late November, December, January. We have enough months when you plant for dormant. I promise you can get pruning in there. If you're like, oh, but I can't get out because of what I need to do, I don't want to do it in the snow and everything else. Yes, you can do it. I just don't recommend it. Try and do it now. And you'll see here on pruning, I mentioned the 4 Ds. Now, we have talked about the 5 Ds before. I'll quickly go over it. So, always, it doesn't matter. Spring, summer, autumn, winter, you're going to prune for the 4 Ds. Dead, disease, damage, dangerous. Okay? And just quickly go over that. Dead is a branch that's completely broken. It's hanging down the tree. Get rid of it. Snow can build up into there, create more weight, causing more damage. Disease, well, if the entire branch is brittle, black knot, something else, might be easier to cut it off than constantly trying to combat the problem. Damage, same thing. The branch might be alive, but it's essentially broken. Frost, pathogens, whatnot are going to try and get in there. Cut the whole branch back, cut it nice to the collar, give the tree a fighting chance. And dangerous. Maybe there's a branch that's grown now and it's going over your car, over your house, over power lines. Snow is going to get on that. It may break. You might want to remove that. The 5th D is design, is the aesthetic. Don't be pruning for that right now. We don't use. I've seen people in the fall pruning that. They're nipping it back and they're shaping it and they're like, oh my God, I love it. Then over the winter, 4 of those branches die. You got to prune it all over again. Your aesthetic didn't last at all. So don't prune for that. It's not worth it. You don't want to be doing any unnecessary pruning right now. So there are the 5 Ds of pruning, but at this time of year, we're doing the 4 Ds: dead, disease, damage, dangerous. Those are the ones we're looking at. And that's it for pruning. As always, when you prune, a nice, shiny, sharp, clean pair of pruners, a good saw, always cut to the collar, cut to a bud, prune properly no matter what time of year, you're going to see a big difference. And then next is removing your annuals. And the first point, and I was tempted to do it all in caps, but I don't want to get shouty. It's Sunday morning, it's too early for shouty. Please ensure it's an annual. I have seen people rip perennials out the fall.
Oh, my heart.
I've seen it. It's not good. Things die. They're not a gardener. They don't remember. They can't remember perennial or annual. They make a mistake, and that's all it is. It's an honest mistake. And they grab that perennial and they yoink, and some of those annuals are going to have massive root systems. They can be just as hard to take out as a perennial. So don't think, oh, if it comes out easy, it's an annual. If it's difficult, it's a perennial. So please ensure. If you're really, really uncertain, if you really don't know, ask somebody, ask us, or leave it alone. Okay? Springtime will tell you what it is. Right? So if you're not sure and you're like, I don't know, leave it. If it's completely dead in the spring, doesn't matter if it was a perennial or an annual, it didn't make it through the winter, it comes out. If it starts sending up new growth, if it was a perennial, you're going to leave it and you'll clean the dead leaves off around it. If it was an annual, it's not coming back, get rid of it in the spring. So and I've seen it happen and I will continue to see it happen, I'm sure. That's why I wanted to bring that. And remove the whole plant. I see people break off their annuals to make it look clean. Then in the spring, they're trying to plant their new annuals and they're hitting root balls, and it's frustrating. Take your garden trowel with you. As you go, just take it down the side, crank, gone, straight in the compost bin. Okay? when you do it, take it and give it one of those on the roots. Shake as much soil off as you can. That's great soil. It's a bit depleted, but we're going to amend our soil next spring. So you want to keep it in there. Get as much soil off as you can into the compost with it. Okay. And one of the reasons that we do it, it's easier for all the other cleanup. It's easier to get the weeds out of the bed. And it's easier in the spring. Like I said, in the spring, so many of us are busy. So many people are like, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. I want to get out and enjoy the weather. It's been a long winter. And we're so busy anyway. Do the job now when there's less to do in the garden. And a lot of times it really is that easy. You can rip through. It should take you about 1/10 of the time to rip an annual out that you planted. Because again, you're not digging your hole, you're not putting it in out of the pot, you're not trimming it down, you're literally crank, gone. That's it. So try and get rid of them. It will massively benefit you in the spring. And it's not all or nothing. You don't have to go out there. We get a very mild frost. Your New Guinean patients are like, that's it, I'm checking out, see you later. You don't have to be like, well, the New Guinean patients are dead, and you start ripping out your mums, or you start ripping out your zinnias and your dahlias and your pansies. They might not need to come out yet. Keep the color as long as you can, even in a pot. If I have a pot and we have some, it's got some daisies in it. Can't remember what else we put in. Jenny would know. But there's a New Guinean patient. That New Guinean patient, I know for a fact is going to be the first to go. Okay, it's in a pot. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cut it. Get rid of it. I'll leave the rest of it. When the whole pot is finished, I'll just dump the whole thing straight into the compost and put my pot away. It's done. But I'll keep the rest of it looking pretty because it is quite pretty. Why not? So it's not an all or nothing. You don't, and if you want it to be an all or nothing, and you don't mind looking at, the dead plants, wait until everything's dead and go out and clean them all up. Or you can do it in stages. It's on you, but it doesn't have to be. If your New Guinean patients are dead, it doesn't mean your pansies are. Go according to the plant. And then cutting back. So that is very specific for perennials. You don't want to cut back your shrubs. Like I said, that's not a pruning job. You're not cutting back your annuals because there's no point. Your bulbs, well, they're underground, they're fresh planted, or if your bulbs are round, they're already finished back in June. You won't even know they're there. So cutting back is very specific for perennials. And I grabbed a couple here. I'm glad we have them in stock. We're going to talk about planting next, so it's not too late to plant these. So that's why I was happy to grab them. Okay, so two beautiful perennials. This is heuchera or coral bells, and this is bleeding heart or dicentra. I love both of these. When you're cutting back, okay, what you're doing, like we already mentioned briefly with this, I snip it all back, and I'm getting rid of it, and I'm sending a message to the roots. Hey, there's nothing happening here right now. Save all of your energy. Sort yourself out. There's no need to send any sugars and waters and everything else. And there's no need to do any of that. Your job there is done. You look after yourself because there's nothing here for it to worry about. So I'm sending a message to the roots. This isn't photosynthesizing anymore. It's dead. Boom. No harm, no foul. That gets cut back. Bam, we're in business. Okay? And it also helps in the spring. So I don't cut this back, let's say, and it all falls in, the snow, and it cuts back. Now I have to cut it back in the spring. Well, now I'm trying to lift it and get my snips in. Well, a bleeding heart, as we touched on in the spring, they come up real quick. It may have shoots. Now I'm trying to cut this without damaging the new shoots. So if I do it now, I'm sending a good message and I'm ensuring good growth in the spring. I'm not too worried about that. So I like to cut them back, but not every perennial needs to be cut back. Heuchera, if you can look there, is one of the examples I didn't do. I'm going to leave this. It's almost a semi-evergreen. It's not even green. Wow, really makes me look like a fool, Heuchera. We call them semi-evergreens. And that leaf is going to stay like that. In the spring, that leaf itself might perk up. This one might not. I'll snip that, I'll leave that, and it'll send new growth out from the base. So there are certain ones you cut back, there are certain ones you don't. And again, if you're unsure, if you really don't know, just leave it alone. You can clean them up in the spring. It will be more tedious. It will take longer because you're trying to protect the buds, you're looking in it, but it's better to take that little bit of time than do lasting damage now. So always, if you're unsure, leave it. It can always be gotten to later. You can always hit us up with a question in the spring, in the fall, dead of winter. We don't care. We're around. We're open year round. Brandy and I are on social media year round. You have a question, hit us up anytime. We're happy to answer them. So that's what you want to do for cutting back. It is really good. I do it as much as I possibly can. Again, one less thing to worry about in the spring. Okay, and now planting. So a lot of times, and this it's a personal thing that really bugs me, is end of July, August hits in Calgary, and people go, well, too late to plant. What? Not at all. I have planted trees in November. I have put fresh sod down in November. Planting is not done, and transplanting and dividing, depending on the plant, we're going to touch on that, are great to be done at this time of year. So let's look at planting. So the main thing is that it's weather dependent. All of what I'm talking about is weather dependent. Because here's another thing. Everything I've just said falls in if we get the time and we have the nice weather. I think we all remember Snowmageddon. I think we all remember years where we're like, oh my God, it's absolutely beautiful. We wake up October 1st, we've done nothing in our gardens because the weather's been so nice and there's a foot of snow and it doesn't go away. Well, then we do have a big spring cleanup, and that spring cleanup normally sucks. I hear it all the time. I've done it. I used to do landscaping professionally. I think a lot of you know that. And that's happened to me before, professionally, before I've even gotten the chance to do my client's yard. So in the fall, it's great. You're like, hey, nothing to do. This is the best fall ever. Woo, put my feet up. In the spring, you're like, I hate spring. So if you can't get to it, you can't get to it. You can't rake. You can't put fertilizer on your lawn. You can't cut back your perennials. You can't dig out your annuals. So what? Nothing we can do. We're dependent upon the weather. However, the flip side to that is if we have an autumn like we had last year, that pushes right through to November. If trees are available, if sod's available, put it down. It will take, I promise, I've done it. And again, if you're not sure, ask us. There are some that are essential. Bulbs, they need to go in the ground now. I've planted bulbs in a foot of snow before. Scraping snow out, the ground is this frozen. I've literally had a trowel and a hammer. Break it until the ground is soft, lifted it all, put my bulbs in. I don't wear gloves, so my hands are freezing. You're muddy, you're filthy. It is not pleasant. But next spring, when all the tulips and the daffodils are coming up, it was worth it. So your bulbs have to go in. That is weather dependent, but it doesn't matter what the weather do. Rain, snow, frozen. You've got to get. If you don't get them in, they ain't gonna grow. You can't put them in the spring. But this weather that we're having today, I've got a pallet of sod outside. We have got trees and perennials still in our loft. We've got brand new mums and grasses that have come in to do fall planting. It is a great time of year. And pro tip, I don't know if you guys have seen, not really pro tip, it's all over our social media, but pro tip, everything in the tree lot and perennial lot's on sale right now.
Yeah.
And it's a perfect time to plant. So let's go back to this one. Early spring bloomer, as we know. You come to the greenhouse next year in May or June, okay? Ready to do your planting, May long weekend, first weekend in June, whatever timeline you use. This could have already finished flowering. You get it in the ground now, it's going to flower in your flower bed next year. Doesn't look like much, but you get it in the ground right now, next spring, it's going to grow, it's going to come up, and it's going to flower, and you're going to get that flower now. Same with the eucalypt, same with the shrubs. And the great thing, and I grabbed these ones specifically, you put them in right now, you've just added some great fall color. You've just added some nice burgundies, and we've got a tree lot full, well, not full, it's very bad. But it doesn't just have these two. There's a ton of other stuff I didn't grab. I grabbed these specifically fall color and to show them that there are options, and it is an amazing, amazing time of year to do it. And then I'm actually taking this mum when we're done because it's a gift from my mum.
Aw.
And my mum doesn't know how to sign into the webinars. She's not exactly computer savvy. She doesn't know she's getting that. That's why I can tell you guys. So that's just a little autumn gift from my mom. It always makes her happy. So I'll be dropping that off right after work for my mom. So I don't know if Jenny tuned in. I might have to get Jenny one now too.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna get two.
Someone's in trouble.
A mum for my mom. And then, like I touched on, it's a great time of year. I normally, if I'm going to do a big job, I normally divide my perennials and transplant my perennials in the spring. However, I will also do it in the fall if it's going to be a long, nice, beautiful autumn like we're currently having. And one of the things that's really good about doing it now, as opposed to the spring, the plants are going dormant. So you lift a plant that's alive and it's got new shoots and you cut it, you're going to damage it, which is going to shock it. Right now, it's dormant. It's sitting, it's like, grab a hold of your kid to shave the head. Okay, they're going to squirm. They're going to be like, "Get off! Why are you shaving my head, weirdo?" Okay, but when they're sleeping and you go, okay, I'm just saying what I do, frankly. I'm just kidding. I'm not shaving his head. But when they're dormant, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier on your plants too. The cooler weather. If you remember, we talked about when dividing it. You lift a perennial when it's 34 degrees. That plant is going to be shocked. Those roots do not want to be exposed to that level of heat. The roots want cooler weather. The roots want it to be in the shade. So that's what we're looking at there. You don't want it to go into shock. And basically that dormancy and the cooler weather allows you to do it with minimal damage. And then in the spring, the new growth and whatnot comes up, doesn't even know it was divided or split. However, when you do it, nothing changes from all of the other times I've mentioned it. When you lift it, you want to lift as much of the roots as possible. When you're cutting, when you're doing it, you want to use shiny, sharp tools. You don't want to use blunt tools. You don't want to use tools covered in rust or mud. You want to have them nice and clean. Pruners, in case you have to actually cut through the roots. You want to make sure that's done. When you plant it, so you lift the perennial, the shrub from here, put it here, you plant it, fantastic. Water it. We already talked about watering. Water, water, water. It's going to need it. If you've done it, a little bit of bone meal. This is a ridiculous slow release fertilizer. It's really going to help in the spring when the plant's waking up. It's not going to do much right now. It's really going to add to those roots. A dusting of bone meal, dig your hole, you got it, throw in a dusting of that, put it back in, plant it, water, 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 water. Should be just fine. And then try not to do the fall blooming ones. Much like I said, you don't want to divide your bleeding heart in the spring. We talked about that in the spring. You don't want to divide your sedum or your goldenrod in the fall. You've waited all year. It's finally looking amazing. There's not a lot of perennials blooming. It looks great. You're going to lift it and cut it in half. There's a good chance it's dropping all those blooms. It's going to go into shock. Okay? So you really don't want to do that. Save that one for the spring. Do your other ones in the fall. So as you can see, there's still lots to do in the garden. Lots of fun jobs, but it's not manic. Okay? There's fun things, and it's great weather. You're not out there in 35, it's too hot, you don't want to be out there. You're not out there in the spring and it's muddy and it's wet and it's cold. A day like today, perfect to be out there. You know, I'll probably do some gardening this afternoon when I get home. And tonight we already decided we're going to have a backyard fire. We're going to be able to have one. It's too much smoke, it's too hot, it was too dry. We can have a fire. We've got our fire pit ready, we've got our firewood. We're going to make s'mores. We're going to cook hot dogs, probably fire up the barbecue. We're going to enjoy a cooler night outside around the fire.